This is the Max Kellerman Show. Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio.
The Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio. Raj, I'm trying to do this off my phone. They're going to be able to see it on all right, there we go. On ESPN News, which we're also on, the ESPN app, and Sirius XM Channel 80, and on your smart speaker. Reach me at 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Max Kellerman Show is presented by Progressive Insurance. Is this start versus the Bills one of Cam's most important of his career? I'll get into that in a second. All guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Also, what should Major League Baseball do about Justin Turner? Did you hear what Stephen A? He got a text from an insider in Major League Baseball after at first he disagreed with me about the punishment for Justin Turner, and he wound up agreeing after he read this text. Wait till you hear it. Be a part of Max Kellerman Nation on the Dr. Pepper call-in line. That would be the Dr. Pepper call-in line. 888-SAY-ESPN. ESPN Nation is presented by Dr. Pepper. It's official. College football's back. So is your favorite Dr. Pepper-loving football, college football town, Fansville. Head to a store near you to treat your inner college football fan to an ice-cold 20-ounce Dr. Pepper today. By the way, Cam Newton enters this game, and the Patriots enter this game not only 2-4, and against a divisional rival in the Bills, who are now considered the class of the division, 5-2. But, oh, by the way, and this is Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Before it wasn't Straight Talk. I was giving you Crooked Talk until just now. Now it's straight. Edelman's not available. Remember the receivers last year that everyone was complaining about Tom Brady didn't have? Cam doesn't have them, plus Edelman's a year older, and oh yeah, he also doesn't have Edelman against the Bills. Remember how the defense carried Tom Brady and the running game? And Brady led, there's no doubt about it. They led to the tune of 12 games. They didn't win the last game of the season, which they needed to win against the Miami Dolphins. And they lost their first playoff game. They didn't have a playoff win. Not so easy to win to make the conference finals when you don't have that bye in the first round and then a home game in the second round, right? At any rate, that defense, 9 opt-outs. When you look at injuries and opt-outs before the season, 9 players off the defense and no Edelman. Cam does not have a lot to work with. I'm making excuses for Cam. Cam, I mean, you can't throw the ball 15 times and throw 3 interceptions. But this is the reality that he's dealing with. We argued on First Take today who's under more pressure. Andy Reid, Mike McCarthy or Carson Wentz. And I actually said McCarthy because the Cowboys look like they quit. And Wentz has apologists. No matter what he looks like, they apologize. He's doing great. Don't worry about it. He's the greatest quarterback ever. And I'll point out, actually, no. So I think McCarthy is under more pressure in the sense that he needs to who has to prove more? McCarthy has to prove that his team didn't quit on him. You know, Brian Flores, think about last year, beginning of last year, the Dolphins quit. We were literally asking after the first couple of weeks, are the Miami Dolphins the worst NFL team of all time? They've quit on the coach. No, they didn't, actually. They just weren't good yet. By the end of the year, they beat the Patriots in a must-win game for the Patriots. And they're 3-3 this year. So Brian Flores still has a job. And in fact, he looks pretty good. Mike McCarthy's under tremendous pressure. But there are those who would say, look, and Stephen A. made the case, and I think Damian Woody also made the case. Look, Mike McCarthy doesn't have his quarterback. He doesn't have his backup quarterback. He doesn't have his offensive line. His defense is dead last or second to last in every single statistic. You know, what do you want from that guy? Well, all right. That's a good explanation as to why the team doesn't perform very well. Still can't get routed that way. You still can't look like you have no idea what you're doing. And the same applies for Cam Newton. Nope, the Patriots have very little right now for Cam to work with. But you can't lose 2 consecutive weeks like you lost. You know, you can't lose again like you lost last week. You can't get routed. You can't throw the ball 15 times and 3 of them are interceptions. Just can't do it. That's why Cam was like, hey, I keep playing like this, I won't have a starting job. He's not wrong. Now, I have to believe that there's something wrong with Cam physically. Just like when they yanked Garoppolo, I had to think, and they were like, oh, is he going to start? Well, listen, Garoppolo's good. Oh, no, look, see, I told you Garoppolo's no good. No, Garoppolo's excellent, actually. I don't care what you say about Garoppolo. Wherever he plays, he wins. And whenever he doesn't play, they almost always lose. His whole career, like with the Niners, is 2-0 with New England. Gets to the Niners, they can't win. They go 5-0. He gets hurt, they can't win again. They go like 3-13. He gets healthy, they go 12-4. I mean, they can't win without him, and they almost can't lose with him. Garoppolo's good. And I mean, if he was really that close to replacement level, then his replacement would not lose almost every game. Anyway, I knew when Garoppolo sat, or they were talking about maybe he won't play, there's got to be a physical issue. And sure enough, he got healthy. It was his ankle. He got healthy and came back and routed the Patriots. I have to believe there's something physically wrong with Cam. And by the way, he just had COVID. If you have the flu, you're not the same 1 week later as you were. You might be healthier than you were, but it's not like you're usually 100% a couple days after the flu. This is COVID-19. And I don't think it's coincidental that he looked really sharp to start the season, first couple games. And then he has a bad game that he wins against the Raiders. And then he's diagnosed with COVID and he can't play. And then the games since he came back, he doesn't look physically the same. It seems to me, since they're on either end of his COVID illness, that they could be related to COVID. Maybe he was asymptomatic or largely asymptomatic when he played the Raiders. I don't know. And maybe he's still feeling it. We don't know the lasting effects. Or maybe it's something else. But physically, he doesn't seem the same to me. Let me tell you what I mean. Forget about offensive line protection. Forget about what receivers are open or not open, or getting separation or not getting separation. Cam Newton, in the beginning of the season, was throwing a beautiful spiral, right? The ball coming out of his hand looked good. And he was accurate and throwing the ball down the field. And he looked really good. Like when he played Russell Wilson, I don't know. I guess Russell Wilson was a little bit better, but that's the feeling I had. Like, ooh, I'm looking at two elite quarterbacks. Who's better? And now Cam forgot how to play? Or you might say, look, his mechanics have always been inconsistent, and that's why he's inconsistent. There's a difference between being accurate and being, what would you say? Being able to thread the needle and being accurate, right? Like, in other words, you can be accurate on certain given plays, but can you do that consistently? And maybe that's what's going on with Cam. Maybe it's always been this way, but he won MVP once upon a time. He took a team to the Super Bowl once upon a time without much offense around him. And again, under Norv Turner as his offensive coordinator, not that long ago, well, not that long, right before he got injured, he looked better than he'd ever looked from the pocket to me. So you mean to tell me if he's healthy now, he can't do that again in New England with the coaching in New England? I think he can, and I saw him do it. And the fact that he apparently forgot how to do it leads me to believe he's not 100%. But it's a no excuses league. A full contact sport, no one's trying to hear excuses. You may give an explanation, it's not an excuse. It's like in boxing. I came into the fight with a bad elbow, shoulder, whatever, like everyone comes in with bumps and bruises. You're sparring all of it for 6 weeks before the fight, right? Well, football players, that's what it is. It's largely a war of attrition. You're getting tackled for week after week after week. You ever talk to anyone who played in the NFL? You ever heard them talk about it? Can't get out of bed for a couple days. Marcellus Wiley, my old radio partner here on ESPN Radio in LA, used to talk about he couldn't get up to go to the bathroom. He kept like a Gatorade bottle or something by the bed. And then like 3 days later or 2 days later, you got to be at practice. It's a brutal way to make a living, and injuries can be explanations for why someone's not playing well. But if they're out on the field, it's not an excuse. I'm not making excuses for Cam. How he plays is how he plays, but I do think there must be an explanation other than Cam's just no good, because I've seen him be quite good. Not, I don't know, weeks ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago. We're going to talk to we're going to talk to Pedro Gomez, MLB Insider, on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line. Is he there yet, or am I going to wait another minute, Raj? I'm going to wait another minute to talk to him about Justin Turner. What's going on with Justin Turner is so outrageous. So Justin Turner may have tested positive, or maybe it was inconclusive. I've found what I've read to be inconclusive about that before the game started. I think the day before, they retested the sample, and in the seventh inning, it came back positive, either again or now this time it was not inconclusive. It was conclusive. He was positive. He has COVID-19. He got the coronavirus, a disease that has killed almost 250,000 Americans. And by the way, for anyone listening who is especially susceptible to low-quality information, let me explain to you. When people are out there, it's only like 9,000 or 10,000 who died of COVID. It's fake news. It's the most idiotic thing I ever heard. Try not to repeat idiotic things you read that originate from low-quality sources. Let me explain what people are saying. The 9,000 or 10,000 people who died of COVID died of only COVID. Tens of thousands of others, hundreds of thousands of others, have died of COVID, and they had another condition, diabetes, whatever it is. That's what we mean when people say, oh, it's just like the flu. No, if you have an underlying condition, it's deadly. It can be deadly. And even if you don't, it can be deadly, but especially if you have an underlying condition. That's why wearing a mask is not, you don't tread on me. No. Wearing a mask is a selfless act. The selfish are saying, I don't want to wear it. And by the way, masks are no fun to breathe in. I get it. I don't like them either. But if you wear them as an act of selflessness. So when Justin Turner was told he can't go back out on the field to celebrate with his teammates, and he broke protocol, that was an incredibly selfish act. Now, on the progressive, hold on. Guys, I need to see here we go. That was Straight Talk Wireless, everything for less only at Walmart. Now, Pedro Gomez, ESPN MLB Insider, joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line. Pedro, what can you tell me about the latest on the MLB investigation into Justin Turner?
Max, great to talk to you again. I would say that MLB is incredibly upset and angry that this happened, because what it does is it stains the entire baseball season. At the very beginning, we had the Marlins having to quarantine and miss more than a week's worth of games. Then the Cardinals had to miss, and that was the storyline. And then they got to the postseason, and the postseason actually worked. Everything was working. There were no issues. And then on the last day, this happens, and it just throws a complete stain over everything. And that's really the reason also. That's one of the big reasons. Look, the health issue is the number one reason. But they're really upset that here they had everybody following these great protocols that allowed them to get to the finish line. And all of a sudden, one player goes and just blows through everything and says, no, I'm more important than everything else. It doesn't matter. And that's the anger. That's the anger that they have.
I understand him kissing his wife. He may be thinking, look, at this point, she has it if I have it. What I'm curious about is the following. We haven't heard from Justin Turner. He needs to open his mouth and start talking. No. He needs to say something about this. Because
we also haven't heard from one Dodger person, one executive, nobody.
We need to hear. Yes, that's right. But we have information. We have information that is leaked out about it, but nothing from Turner. Let's look at it this way. If he's the only positive test, I suppose it's not totally impossible that he got COVID without breaking protocol. But if he's the only one who got it, as my father likes to say, if you hear hoofbeats in North America, don't rule out zebras, but think horses first. If he's the only one who got it, it's likely he did break protocol, I would say. I think it's fair to say it's likely he did. And when he went out onto the field, according to a source that Stephen A. Smith discussed, he was out on the field with a teammate who has a 1-month-old with a health issue, I believe. with a manager who had cancer, with another teammate with an underlying condition, and they were all under the impression, apparently, or some of them were under the impression, that he would be quarantined, and he decided to break protocol. Is that also your understanding?
Yeah, my understanding is, and then when he was out there, Major League Baseball saw him and sent security over saying, get him off the field right now. And his response was, F off, I'm staying.
Why didn't security escort him away? Do we know?
Well, when we're talking about Major League security, we're talking about, people who tend to be former FBI agents, but they don't carry a badge. And certainly the last thing I think that anybody wants, the optic, is that somebody is being wrestled to the ground and being taken off, especially someone as easily as noticed as a Justin Turner.
You know something though, Pedro, before you go on,
what they should have done.
But yeah, before you go on, I understand why no one would really. You would think like, oh, we didn't have a contingency in case a player said I refuse to leave the field. And do you really want to try and wrestle them down, especially when they have COVID, right? Like you don't want to get it. I understand that.
There's all of those aspects.
Yeah, I understand that. On the other hand, I've seen James Dolan, the Knicks owner, have fans removed, have a player removed for apparently almost nothing, and apparently it's their right to do so. So why is Major League Baseball so concerned, or the Dodgers so concerned about how it looks for Justin Turner if fans are escorted out all the time when he's breaking protocols and putting people at risk?
Max, I would say they weren't prepared for it. I would say they were not prepared for that type of a response from a player, nor were they prepared to have to physically remove somebody from a ball field, at a time when the celebration is going on. I would say they were not prepared for it. And I don't know that you really could think that out, saying, okay, if we have a player who refuses to leave, we're going to, come in and just physically remove him. I don't know that necessarily exists. That plan exists from a celebratory type of moment. It's a horrible optic. And it's horrible.
This is what I want to know, Pedro. This is what I want to know from Justin Turner. Is he one of these people who is so susceptible to low quality information? Does he not have the capacity to understand this is bad information, this is presented as a fact, but in fact it's untrue, this is a fantastical claim, this is a conspiracy theory? Is he one of those people who doesn't understand that you need to wear a mask, doesn't understand the efficacy of them, and is flouting it? Is that really what he believes and is flouting it? It reminds me of Rudy Gobert when he touched all the microphones and everything, making light of it, but he didn't know he was positive, and this is before everyone understood how serious it was, and then he immediately apologized. Whoa, I'm sorry, I really screwed up. But now this has been going on for a while. We have almost 250,000 Americans dead from COVID, millions and millions more who have it and are contagious. And I would love to know from Justin Turner what his feelings about this are, and whether any of this was a kind of, when he tells them to bleep off security, if he has that basic feeling about security measures around this disease.
Here's my understanding, Max, and I spoke to a couple of Dodger players, not just now, but a few weeks ago, that when the Marlins and the Cardinals issues came up, and those teams had to be pulled off the schedule for more than a week at a time, and baseball said, look, the only way this is going to work is if everybody takes it seriously. Turner, being one of the longer tenured Dodgers, when they had their meeting with their players, I'm talking about back in July, late July, early August, when baseball said, we've got to clamp down, Turner was one of the players that actually stood up and said, this has to be taken seriously. We have to do something in order for this season to go on. We have so much at stake here. We have this great ball club. It would be a shame for us not to be able to have a chance to win it all because of this. So he took it, at least at that point, that seriously.
That's good to know. That's good information.
But I'm not capable of telling you whether he is one of these conspiracy theorists who says, oh, this is all BS, and maybe he was just doing that at the time because he knew that's the only way the baseball season would continue. But he was one of the players that did stand up and say, we have to take this seriously.
You know what bothers me, Pedro? That's very good information.
Was it so that the season would go on, or was it because he truly knew how serious this disease is?
Yeah, I did not know that. But I want to say this. Even if Justin Turner is thinking about it rationally and he thinks, look, I have it, but I've had it this whole time. And I was in the dugout with teammates and everything. And the celebration's out on the field in the open air. And in fact, if you wear a mask, that's extremely effective at not spreading the virus. And if I have a mask on while I'm on the field and we're in the open air, because it's the amount of virus that's coming out of your mouth as you speak, as a percentage of the volume of air, right? That's why outside is much safer than inside. So all those things considered, I could go out there and take some pictures. To hell with this. I've just won the World Series with my team. I want to be there with them. I understand that impulse. But if there are protocols in place and and family members of your teammates believe you're quarantined and you go out onto the field and you remove your mask, even if he's thinking, yes, but I'm facing forward. I'm parallel with Dave Roberts and my teammates. I'm not turning toward them with my mask off my mouth. Even if you're thinking that, the fact that you are positive and contagious at that moment and are putting your own experience of winning the World Series and wanting to celebrate it in that moment on the field with your teammates ahead of the health of everybody else is the definition of a selfish act. And I think there should be a severe punishment for Justin Turner. I would like to hear his side of the story from him. But if it more or less jibes with what we've been hearing, I think he needs a lengthy suspension. Pedro Gomez, ESPN MLB Insider, I thank you. Max Kellerman Show, presented by Progressive Insurance. Drivers who save with Progressive save over $750 on average. The Steelers passed the test against the Titans. Can they remain undefeated against the Ravens? Should Jerry hit the reset button with the Cowboys? We'll talk about that a little later on. The Max Kellerman Show is brought to you by Shell. Pennzoil synthetic motor oils are made from natural gas. It gives you unbeatable engine protection. The proof is in the Pennzoil, based on Sequence 4A wear test using SAE 5W30. Giants' Will Hernandez, the guard. I was happy the Giants took him in that draft. Tested positive for COVID-19. Chargers players also tested positive for COVID-19. Here we are, heading toward flu season. Rates of COVID are spiking. I don't know if, or maybe they're just continuing to climb. But in other words, it's not just a spike that's then going to be flattened. The curve is not going to be flattened if we open everything up. We're going to have to close things up again. And that, by the way, that was going to happen anyway. We were going to open, and then the curve would go up, and then we'd close again, and it would go down. But the rates are not supposed to be what they are right now. In Canada, they're less than half. The rates are less than half. Obviously, it's a smaller country, much lower population. But their rates are less than half of our rates because we have sucked at fighting the coronavirus because of a disastrous, impossibly irresponsible handling of it, starting at the top of our federal executive branch and trickling down through a lot of heads of the executive in different states and just generally irresponsible public figures in our politics, telling us at first, it's 15 people, soon to be none, and then we have it under control, and we've ended the pandemic. And in the meantime, at the same time, they're releasing statements, well, we're not going to get this under control. It ain't under control, folks. Dr. Fauci now saying the end of next year. That's hopefully. If we start doing the right thing today, maybe. But listen, in the beginning it was, should we even be playing tackle football? Probably not. But at least let's give it a shot. I didn't think they'd get through the baseball season. They did. And Justin Turner controversy notwithstanding, they did. We crowned a champion. And by the way, Major League Baseball looked at it and said, okay, the players won't go in a bubble. The players wanted 82 games. Baseball finally said, we can't come to an agreement. We're going to unilaterally impose a 60-game season. Almost a third of our normal season. The NFL was greedy. They were like, no, let's not do, we ain't doing that. We're going to have all our games. And we'd like to have some fans, too. Good luck. But so far, they're ahead of where I thought they'd be. I have to admit it. And part of that is the tests are now more readily available. And part of it is we know much more about the disease now. That's why death rates are declining. Deaths are accumulating, close to 250,000, but the rate of death compared to the number of cases is declining because we understand more about the disease now. Still a lot we don't understand, including the lingering effects. Of course, hope that Will Hernandez and the Chargers players who have COVID get better. Hope for their speedy recovery and no lasting effects. Let me get on to Ben Roethlisberger now.
Well, it's
first
tough.
of all,
it's a physical.
No, guys, not yet. I'm going to set this up. First of all, the Steelers-Ravens rivalry is one of the best in sports. And they are two proud franchises with great histories who consistently field competitive teams. Even when you look at the beginning of the season and you say, I don't think that's a playoff team, through the years, but they're usually competitive. If you beat the Ravens or the Steelers, you've beaten a competitive NFL team. And this game is especially interesting because Lamar Jackson and the passing game for the Ravens have not looked good enough to pass muster. And Ben Roethlisberger, while he's getting rid of the ball much quicker than he used to, a lot of RPOs now, right? Just threw 3 interceptions. Like Roethlisberger's QBR puts him as a mid-pack quarterback. And I want to be very clear. I think what Roethlisberger has done is amazing. He came back from an elbow surgery with 3 ligaments in his throwing arm on his elbow, where I remember him saying something at the time, like the doctor told him, no quarterback has ever had this and come back, something like that. Anyway, not only has he come back after a year off and a catastrophic injury, he's playing solid. I think he's a real NFL quarterback, starting quarterback. But he ain't been Ben Roethlisberger. Their record is 6-0 because he's been solid, and he has a great defense, and he has some offensive weapons, and he has a great coach. I think the Steelers could win it all this year, well, if not for the Chiefs. If Roethlisberger is himself. But he hasn't been quite. He's been an amazing version of what I was expecting, but not himself, really. Roethlisberger's not a guy you'd expect in the middle of the pack, throwing 3 interceptions in a must-win in a game against undefeated teams, where, by the way, his team did win, and he deserves credit. He's the winning quarterback. But he threw 3 INTs. Anyway, Ben Roethlisberger, how would you? Well, first of all, whoever is who has the itchy trigger finger on this sound? I'm setting it up. Raj, Chris, who is that?
I don't know, man. I'm gonna have to call the 1-800-SNITCH hotline on you. You had a 4 or 5 second pause there.
That's right. I'll tell you when I want it. Ben Roethlisberger, how would you define the Steelers-Ravens rivalry?
Well, it's tough. It's a physical one. It can be nasty at times, but I've always felt as many times as my nose has been broke, we've had injuries. It's been a close game. It's always been football in its truest form in the sense that it's never dirty. It's never been nasty. It's just been hard-nosed football. And so this is one you always want your bye week to be after.
I kind of agree with them. Guys, Raj, let me ask you, can you think offhand of a better divisional rivalry at the moment than Steelers and Ravens? So, count the history, but also count how they stack up now.
Right, but I'm going to weigh more on at the moment, and I can't think of one bigger than this. I mean, this is the game of the week by far, and another physical test for the Steelers after playing the Titans last week.
That's right. But, I think about the NFC East, that's the garbage division, right? The AFC East, the Patriots are not what they were, and, the Bills and the Dolphins, there's nothing there compared to Ravens Steelers, right? You take the NFC North, Bears got exposed. The Packers are clearly the class of the division. Vikings and Lions ain't doing anything this year, as usual with the Lions. But the Vikings also, they looked to have some promise last year, but it's not happening. So, so far still the AFC North, right? In the South, what do you got? I guess Saints and Bucks, but it's not like they have this storied rivalry, Saints and Bucks. What's there, really? I guess the NFC West, simply because you have a lot of good teams. That's the best division, top to bottom. But is there a single rivalry that's like Steelers-Ravens? I don't think there is.
Niners and Seahawks are pretty good, but
Niners and Seahawks are really good. And by the way, the Rams also and the Seahawks, like it could be one year that one of those teams is great, the other team beats them twice, right? But none of those are, when all things considered, that's not the Steelers and the Ravens. I know what Roethlisberger means. Like I think that's the best divisional rivalry in football right now. I think Steelers-Ravens got it, unless I'm really forgetting something. Lamar Jackson, former Heisman winner, will need protection. Heisman protection is brought to you by Allstate. Get better protected with Allstate. You've never been in better hands. Lamar and Big Ben, both with a lot on the line here. Lamar has never played Ben Roethlisberger's Steelers. He has not played well and has failed twice in the playoffs and 3 times against Mahomes and the Chiefs, which are kind of viewed in a kind of meta way as his chief rival, so to speak. But the Steelers with Roethlisberger and the Ravens with Lamar Jackson, last time Roethlisberger played, it was Flacco. And last time Lamar Jackson played, it wasn't Roethlisberger. The winner of this game could tell you something. Time for Jerry to hit the reset button, plus AXE Max with Sirius XM Channel 80 and on your smart speaker, 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. About to hit the Dr. Pepper call-in line. The Max Kellerman Show is presented by Progressive Insurance. Progressive celebrating 8 years of donating cars to veterans in need. Learn more at keystoprogress.com.
AXE Max.
Lane in Ohio, you're on the Max Kellerman Show, ESPN Radio.
Hey, Max, if Justin Turner had to be pulled in the 8th, all of his teammates that he was with all day long, should they have been pulled also due to contact tracing?
It's not a bad point. It's really not a bad point. So far, by the way, there have been no other positive tests, but that's not a bad point. News from Max Kellerman Nation. Lane just hit us up on the Dr. Pepper call-in line. The point being, if Turner came back positive, then according to contact tracing, they should have shut down the World Series right then. Dave in New York, you're on the Max Kellerman Show, ESPN Radio.
Hey, Max, this is Chris in L.A. I just wanted to tell you hit it out the park this morning with Stephen A. He finally had to acknowledge that Justin Turner should be...
Well, Stephen A. got, to be fair, Stephen A. got new information. So upon hearing
even before that.
Well, Stephen A. and I just disagreed based on the old information. But once he got the new information, he conceded, there should be a punishment. Yes, I was excellent as always. That part was very true, Raj. It's a very good point Chris just brought up. News from Max Kellerman Nation. Chris hit us up on the Dr. Pepper call-in line to tell me how excellent I was today. And, Raj, it might be the best point made in sports broadcasting all week, I think.
You were also extra handsome today. The great suit. You had a great angle. I mean, yeah.
Another excellent point.
Tie.
You and Chris tied for best point made in sports broadcasting this week. Very handsome.
Fair enough.
I learned something about my beard today. I won't color my beard. I can't do it. I can't color my hair. You just get older. Come on. But anyway, I noticed that it didn't look as white this week. And it's because I sheared it down instead of totally shaving it off. Usually the weekend comes, I shave it off so my kids don't complain when I give them kisses, Mm-hmm. And this time I sheared it down and I thought it's growing back like darker. But it occurred to me, the reason is the front end of the hair is lighter, the back is darker. It kind of whitens from the top down, right? So the darker hair is now farther out instead of being totally cut off. See that?
Okay, look at you.
I figured out a trick to keep it from going like totally white, in the next week or so.
Well,
Tyrone in Philly, you're on the Max Kellerman Show, ESPN Radio.
Yes. Why in the world do you think that Brian Flores made Tua Tagovailoa a starter over Ryan Fitzpatrick when Ryan Fitzpatrick was playing so well?
Do you think Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to win you a Super Bowl? Because I don't.
No, I don't think Ryan Fitzpatrick
will. And that's the point. Like, Ryan Fitzpatrick is just good enough to be dangerous to a team. He's good enough to make you think he's better than our rookie quarterback, the guy with the upside, and good enough to start him still. So he's just good enough to be dangerous, and you wind up winning 8 or 9 games and not really going anywhere. No, you want to develop Tua as soon as possible. On the rookie deal is where you can make hay in the NFL, when your quarterback's on the rookie deal, if he's a franchise caliber quarterback. And in his second year is when you see the biggest jump in terms of his development. But that only happens if he has some playing time in the first year. So the Dolphins were didn't have an easy choice, but it's a good choice to have, right? That's a good, tough choice to make. Do we go with the future superstar or the current guy who's pretty good? Terrence in Baltimore, you're on the Max Kellerman Show, ESPN Radio.
Hey, Max. Just wanted to kind of debunk your notion about the Pittsburgh Steelers-Ravens rivalry being the best. I can actually make a claim that the Niners, Seahawks, even going back to Pete Carroll, Jim Harbaugh, even Richard Sherman against Michael Crabtree and Aaron. And then also last year, you're going down to the division title on the line at the goal line, making a play. I think you have a hell of a case. I think you have a hell of a case, but there's something about Steelers-Ravens when you include the not-so-recent history also that I would make the number one, but I think Seattle and the Niners are probably at this moment number two. Max Kellerman Show, ESPN Radio. The end on your smart speaker, I heard Keyshawn say Zubin thinks that someone's more interesting than Derek Jeter. He must be talking about Bernie Williams, Raj. Who else could it be? Reach me at 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. I mean, more interesting than Jeter. Only one I can think of is Bernie Williams.
He plays guitar.
Couple NBA openings filled. Going to put him through the ZipRecruiter job search machine a little later in the show. The Max Kellerman Show is presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Cam needs this win. But is something wrong? I think there's something wrong. I saw him, look, let's take Cam's career. Number one draft pick, even in college. Is Cam better or is it Andrew Luck better? In fact, Cam's had the better career. Andrew Luck's already done. Cam won MVP and Cam took a team to the Super Bowl. Had a better career than Andrew Luck in the pros. Anyway, Cam, early in his career, was a physical presence, but not the most accurate passer. But he got good enough to take a team to the Super Bowl and not only win MVP, but be voted by his peers the number one player in football. Recall, this occurred in the middle of Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and Drew Brees' prime. Those three were in their primes. And Cam Newton won MVP. And Cam Newton was voted by other NFL players better than Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and Drew Brees. Okay? That's how good Cam Newton was. And then he regressed a bit. He was only okay. He wasn't great a couple of years. And then he got with Norv Turner as his OC. And through 6 or 7 games, looked as good as he'd ever looked, maybe better. Same physical force, but also a better pocket passer. And then he hurt his shoulder against Pittsburgh. And that was it for the season, really. And he finally comes back from that. And we're waiting to see how he looks. Now, if he's healthy, I think he's going to be really good. He doesn't have Norv Turner anymore. Right? No Norv Turner and Ron Rivera. But he does have Josh McDaniel and Bill Belichick. That's pretty good. Maybe better. Overall, it's better, but maybe even for the quarterback. And guess what? Early on, it showed. First game, well, look at that. Dolphins ended the season pretty well last year, and they beat the Patriots in a game the Patriots had to have, and the Patriots just beat them by 10 points. And the next game, they go to Seattle, and they lose, but on a goal line stand where Bobby Wagner, one of the best linebackers on earth, makes a play to stop Cam Newton from winning the game. Makes a goal line stand. And you're looking and going, damn, throughout that game, Russell Wilson, who, by the way, is like, is he going to be the MVP this year? If he outplayed Cam, okay, but Cam looked great. He looked like an elite quarterback to me. And that looked like a duel between two MVP candidates. He played the Raiders, and I remember thinking, they won that game. That's a good win. And partly it was a good win because Cam didn't look great, but he led his team to a win anyway. And then he gets COVID. And when he gets back from it, he loses consecutive games. And in the last game, he looked terrible doing it. Now, how does a guy go from looking the way he looked to looking the way he's looked recently? Well, you could say, well, Cam in the past has done that. He went from MVP to, that guy's not even a Pro Bowl caliber player. Yeah, but this is different. He looked like he might be in the MVP race by the end of the season in week 2. And then by week 6 and 7, you're like, what happened? Well, let's see. Was there anything that may have happened to Cam Newton? Anything that could have affected him physically or even emotionally, psychologically? I don't know. How about COVID-19? Because he got it. And not only is he playing on a team with a very small margin for error, because, look, the fact is 9 guys off the defense before the year started due to opt-outs and injuries. And then no receiving core to write home about. And now you're down Edelman. So you don't even have, and when you had Edelman, he was a year older than he was last year when Brady had him, and everyone lamented the fact that Brady had no weapons. So your weapons are even worse. And now you don't even have Edelman going into this game. But at any rate, yeah. And by the way, because of COVID, you couldn't practice for a couple weeks. So you have a new system, you're coming off shoulder surgery, and you may be feeling the lingering effects of COVID-19, which is a deadly disease. Can be. Look, it's possible that Cam has just regressed, and he's an up-and-down kind of quarterback, and he's going through a downtime, and it's because they haven't practiced, and it's because he doesn't have weapons that he looks like this, and he has to learn a new system, but I don't know. He looks sharp, really sharp to me against the Seahawks week 2. And he threw the ball 15 times last week, and 3 of them were interceptions. I have to think something's wrong. Jimmy Garoppolo got benched against Miami a couple weeks ago, and I said the same thing. I said it on first day, like, something's got to be wrong with Jimmy Garoppolo. He's good. Don't care what you say about Garoppolo. Wherever he plays, he wins. He was 2-0 with the Patriots as a young quarterback. Belichick wanted to move on from Brady for Jimmy Garoppolo. Brady doesn't end around Belichick as the GM. Goes right to Robert Kraft. Instead, they send Garoppolo out of town and keep the team with Brady. Garoppolo goes to San Francisco. San Francisco couldn't buy a win at the time. Shanahan, a real offensive, brilliant guy, right? His teams play offense. Looks at Garoppolo, says, I want him. Forget about the draft. I want him to be the quarterback. Hands him a franchise quarterback contract. Garoppolo takes over a team that can't win. Immediately, they go 5-0. 5-0. I'm not making it up. Those games happened. Then he gets hurt. Well, Garoppolo, he's all right, but he's not that much better than a replacement level quarterback. I mean, it's really the defense and the offensive mind at coach that's really making San Francisco go, okay, let's see. So Garoppolo goes down. Now you have replacement level quarterbacks. They can't win. They go from losing every game. With Garoppolo, they're 5-0. No Garoppolo, they lose every game again. Then the following season, he's still hurt, right? Misses the season. I think they went 3-13, 4-12 or 3-13. They lost almost every game. Then he comes back the next season, and they go like 4-12 or 13-3. I think it was 4-12. They win almost every game. If he's only a little better than a replacement level guy, that wouldn't have happened. Garoppolo is really good. He's not great, but he's really good. And so when I see them benching Garoppolo and everyone's like, aha, you see? I told you Garoppolo isn't that good. Uh-oh, look out, Garoppolo. Uh-huh. What happened? I said it at the time. Like, something must be wrong. And it was his ankle. Then he got healthy, went to Foxborough and cleaned up. Looked excellent. So I think the same thing is going, not the same thing. It's not an ankle. I think it's effects of COVID or something. Something's got to be wrong with Cam to be playing like this. I don't think it's just he's learning a new system. He doesn't have the weapons. The defense isn't the same. I think something's wrong. He doesn't look sharp. He looked sharp to me early in the season, and he doesn't look sharp. It was showing it on ESPN. He was throwing behind receivers. His timing's off. His accuracy is off. His mechanics look bad. It's possible he's regressed. It has happened before to Cam. But I think there's something more. And the fact that he just had COVID, I think, has something to do with it. And then plus, and missing and the fact that the team hasn't been able to practice. That doesn't help either. 888-SAY-ESPN, the Dr. Pepper call-in line. 888-729-3776. What'd you just say in my ear, Chris? I missed it. I'll take some calls. Is Josh in Boston on the line right now? Josh, you're on the air.
How you doing?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about this situation with Justin Turner and the MLB.
Mm-hmm.
Totally think it's on MLB. They should have pulled him the day before, not let him get in the stadium. And especially when they found out 7th, 8th inning, should have took him out the stadium. Obviously, Justin Turner, very selfish for what he did. But what I want to say is...
By the way, notice how his story is now overshadowing the World Series? Even in that respect, it's selfish. The story should be the Dodgers won the World Series for the first time in 32 years. Clayton Kershaw redeems himself. Mookie Betts, oh my God. And instead, we're all talking Justin Turner, who's an excellent player. Justin Turner's excellent. But come on, man. We're all talking about you. We're not talking about your team. We're not talking about your teammates. You risked people's health. You behaved extremely selfishly. You have a teammate with a 1-month-old kid with a health issue. You have another teammate with an underlying health condition. You have a manager who got over cancer. What the hell's the matter with you? And by the way, we haven't heard from Justin Turner yet. What else you want to say, Josh? Mm-hmm. Craig in Miami, you're on the Max Kellerman Show, ESPN Radio.
Hey, Max, wanted to get your thought on something I was discussing with a buddy. Peyton Manning, he was once probably on most people's Mount Rushmore, right?
Yep.
Is he now outside the top 10 or even top 15?
No, quarterbacks? No. Look, this is what Peyton Manning is to me. Peyton Manning is the greatest regular season football player of all time. Regular season, Peyton Manning's number one. And by the way, we all know it. We lived through it. Like Peyton and Brady, even though the style's not the same as Marino, like Peyton is a different kind of quarterback, but it was like Marino and Montana were like, okay, Marino's more talented, but Montana's better because he's a better situation. And I trust him more in a big moment. That was always Peyton and Brady. Peyton put up the numbers, but you'd rather have Brady. Partly because of the situation he was in, but that has a compounding effect on a player. They actually get to be great in the right situation. And then Tom Brady started putting up Peyton Manning numbers, too, so Peyton didn't even have the numbers argument over him. But we all know what we saw in the regular season. Peyton Manning was the best to ever do it. That includes everybody. Aaron Rodgers, everyone. Not as talented, but the best. He's the best regular season football player, including Lawrence Taylor, Walter Payton, everyone. He's the best regular season football player of all time. But he fell off hard in the playoffs. And eventually he won a Super Bowl and outplayed Tom Brady in an AFC championship game. That was important. And eventually he won another Super Bowl, but he was cooked by then. He rode the defense. I'll still give him credit. And so now he had the monkey off his back that was recently on Clayton Kershaw's back, right? So he's definitely one of the top 10 quarterbacks of all time. But what you notice is Mount Rushmore's interesting. Is he top 4? What you notice is no one refers to Peyton Manning as the greatest quarterback of all time. Find me someone who does. They don't. And he had a hell of a case. That's why I was lamenting Kershaw's situation. Clayton Kershaw has a hell of a case that he's a hell of a case. I think a winning case that he's the greatest regular season pitcher in the history of baseball. And the fact that he choked so often when it mattered most was a killer. But the fact that he came and won that first game, 6 innings, 1 run, 8 Ks, dominant by today's standards. And then followed that up, not by closing out the World Series like everyone wanted to see him do, up 3-1. Where's the pressure? You know where the pressure is? Tied 2-2. Tied 2-2, where your team just gave up a game in such a way that it felt like the baseball gods wanted the Rays to win. And you play stopper right there. Not his fault his manager took him out in the 6th inning. He didn't complete 6. And it turned out to be the right thing to do. Dave Roberts put himself on the line there, but it turned out right because had he not yanked him, everyone was, Kershaw always blows up after 6, and So I would say that Kershaw, because of his struggles in the postseason, will never be considered the GOAT. but he will eventually be considered the greatest regular season pitcher of all time and among the greatest of all time because he did get the monkey off his back. Same with Peyton Manning. Same with Wilt Chamberlain. I put those three in the same category. Wilt Chamberlain, Peyton Manning, Clayton Kershaw. You know, among the very best who ever did it, all champions, and yet because they did struggle compared to their normal selves when their team needed it most in the playoffs, none of them will ever be considered the GOAT. Otherwise, they'd have a hell of a case. But you can't say they never won the big one. They did. Should Jerry Jones blow up the Cowboys? Cowboys released on Terry Poe because of weight issues and production issues. What about trading Ezekiel Elliott or DeMarcus Lawrence or others with big contracts? You see, the Cowboys thought they were really close, but they weren't. They weren't last year when the Eagles had injuries everywhere and the Cowboys could still only go 8-8. And they weren't this year when they took the best player on the board in CeeDee Lamb, but they really needed to address their defense. And they had defections off the defense just because of guys, chasing contracts. And it's hard to keep, good defenses together very long. Number one, they age pretty quickly. And number two, they're going to want to get paid. This is the nature of the NFL. Still, they did not do a good enough job replenishing through the draft. They addressed their offense, which is already quite good. And even before Dak got hurt, they weren't a good football team. And they hired the wrong guy, Mike McCarthy. And the reason they hired Mike McCarthy is because Jerry's boy, Jason Garrett, didn't pan out. He wasn't the right hire. So now Jerry has to go out and do something different. I can't hire a young hotshot right now. That's what I just did, and it didn't work out. I'm going to hire an old, established guy. But Mike McCarthy didn't have a job because he wasn't good enough, even though he had Aaron Rodgers. Can you name one other head coach who'd won a Super Bowl with that quarterback, who had a Hall of Fame quarterback and was so bad with that quarterback going forward that eventually he got moved out of town? Who? Tom Coughlin's job felt like it was on the line every year for the Giants. Like, oh, this can't continue. Won 2 Super Bowls with Eli Manning, not Aaron Rodgers. But once he won the first one with Manning, he was going to be around for any other tries, right? Can you recall? And then eventually they moved on from Coughlin, but the Giants were in bad shape, and they eventually moved on from Eli, as they should have before they actually did. I mean, usually if someone goes, it's the quarterback, even if it's Joe Montana, because they had Steve Young. Bill Walsh, we're going to get rid of you because Joe Montana, it's not working anymore. It's never happened. When did it happen? Maybe it didn't. I can't remember. I don't remember giving a coach the boot. Maybe a guy, it's time to retire. The team's not good anymore. But you won a Super Bowl with one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. That guy's still in his prime, and he wants you gone so bad, the team moves you out. And so what did Mike McCarthy mean? That means you haven't changed with the times. NFL constantly evolving, got to change with the times. Andy Reid, Bill Belichick, Mike Tomlin, all the greats change. Their offenses change, even their defenses change over time. They don't just have some kind of one great cure-all, one great plan. They try to map over everything. They look at what they have and they say, okay, they open the toolbox and this tool applies to this job. Mike McCarthy wasn't able to adjust, so he lost his job. No one was knocking down his door to hire him as coach. Cowboys hired him as coach. Why? And then they tried to package this phony baloney. He understands that he doesn't know analytics and he really buckled down and learned analytics. That's not how it works. He doesn't know what he's doing in today's NFL compared to some other coaches. He was once an excellent coach. You can't win a Super Bowl and just be a bad coach. Maybe Ditka. But, you had the 4-6 defense and Buddy Ryan. Otherwise, hard to win with a bad head coach. And even then, if he doesn't know the X's and O's, he has to be able to lead. He has to be able to organize. But the Cowboys identify Mike McCarthy and say he needs to now be the coach because he fits the role. He's the opposite of Jason Garrett. He's not a young whippersnapper that Jerry Jones discovered. He's an old Super Bowl credible coach because he has one. Look at the resume. Look at the pedigree. But really the reason they hired him is because he doesn't have a big ego compared to a coach that they might need to get, because he won't get credit for winning. He won't take it away from Jerry if they do. It betrays the fact that Jerry Jones, as GM, not just his owner, looked at his team and thought, we're ready to win. No, they weren't. They weren't ready to win. That's a miscalculation. Ezekiel Elliott, they gave a lot of money to. Almost always, that's a bad idea for a running back. Almost always. You draft them fourth, I get it. I'm not against drafting running backs high because you don't really have to pay them in that rookie deal. They're immediately elite players, like year one. You can run them into the ground. I mean, it's morally or ethically, whatever. They should have running back exceptions in the salary cap because these guys should get paid. But the reality is, under the present structure, it's in the best interest of the team, of the franchise, to draft high, get a great running back, run them into the ground for 5 years, franchise them once or twice, and finally, when it's time to pay them, say, look, you only got a year or two ahead of you, so you're not going to get a huge guarantee. Whenever they've paid the running back before they have to, Todd Gurley, Ezekiel Elliott, Le'Veon Bell, how'd that work out for the team who gave him the money? That's what the Cowboys did to Zeke. Yeah, maybe you got to get rid of him. It's not like they're ready to win. If they have high-priced veterans that contenders would pay for in draft picks, you do that, but not before you hire a GM. Jerry's got to take himself into a room, sit down with himself, and say, we're going to have a very difficult conversation. Jerry? What, Jerry? What'd I do? What could be difficult? I'm going to have to let you go. The team's moving in a different direction. I just wanted to tell you face to face. I didn't want you to have to hear it on ESPN. I didn't want to send it in an email. I wanted to tell you face to face. He has to look in the mirror and have that conversation with himself. Get a real GM, and then let the GM handle the fire sale, stockpile draft picks, and make a football.